Did it work? Did I scare you? Well, anyway. Welcome to the month of October, also known as the month where every video game reviewer is obligated to review a spooky game because of reasons. Naturally, I felt inclined to follow this never-ending trend. Although I wasn't really interested in torturing myself with something insane like Alien Isolation or some shit like that. I wanted an experience that was a bit more relaxing. Enter Pumpkin Jack. I didn't actually buy this game for Halloween. I bought it some time ago, but only made a bit of progress and never finished it. But since the month of pumpkins has circled back around, I decided to give it a second attempt. Is Pumpkin Jack worth your money, or is it worth the quality of a mid-2000s Disney Channel script? Or maybe somewhere in between? Let's dive in and find out. Once upon a time, the world was at peace and everyone was happy. Yeah, imagine that. Turns out the devil doesn't like when people are happy though, so he decided to send a bunch of monsters to Earth to raise hell on everyone there. Humanity, not wanting to deal with the devil's bullshit, requests the help of a mystical wizard to kill off the devil's monsters. But the fun doesn't end there, since the devil has one more trick to play in the form of Stingy Jack, a long-deceased trickster known for conning the shit out of everyone he came across. The devil promises Jack amnesty for all his past actions if Jack travels to Earth and kills the wizard, thus removing the last obstacle between the devil and world domination. And yeah, that's about it. I normally take more time to discuss specific events, but this game's story isn't really complex enough to warrant too much of that. Granted, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Not every story needs to reach Metal Gear or Persona levels of insanity. It's mostly just a classic good versus evil situation that provides enough cool moments without having to get into all the deeper implications of some of its characters. You do get to murder Santa Claus though, so that's a thing. There are a few other topics worth mentioning. Jack does get a few companions to help him take out the wizard in the form of a sheepish crow as well as an owl who doubles as an extra set of eyes for the devil to keep tabs on Jack, but that's about it. Oh, and Jack gets his head stolen at one point by some crazy witch who wants to eat it for lunch, but that's resolved in no time flat. I won't talk about exactly how the story ends, but there is a cool quirk that's thrown in. I'll leave it as something for you to look forward to if you decide to play the game yourself. Where Pumpkin Jack shines, though, isn't really the story itself, but rather the presentation of things. There's no voice acting in this game, but you hardly notice that, because the dialogue is really well written and does a fantastic job of conveying the characters' personalities. Jack is exactly how you would expect a PG version of the devil to be. He's cunning, he's snarky, he's threatening, he's arrogant, but none of these traits are amplified to an obnoxious level. Jack is definitely evil, but I still found myself rooting for him pretty early on since his dialogue is just so engaging. I really felt like I understood him in a sense, like I knew what was going on inside his head. The crow is extremely timid and is hesitant to help Jack in his quest at all, but still does since it's afraid of Jack's power, and that's pretty understandable. The wizard seems to be in it more for the glory of the whole thing than actually protecting humanity, but seeing as the story is told from the perspective of the villains, I think that makes a lot of sense. There are other cool characters too, but I won't take the time to list every single one. The game also takes a few subtle shots at video game design cliches, and I won't deny some of them had me cracking a big-ass smile. This game has more going for it than just the dialogue, though. The art style is off the charts as well. The cartoonish atmosphere really allows the characters, enemies, and level design to reach their full potential. It gets you in the mood to play a spooky Halloween game, but it doesn't fall into the trap of being dark, bland, and boring. Everything from the textures, to the lighting, to the character models, and of course the environments themselves are totally on point here. It's something I was thinking about a lot as I progressed through the game. The immersion factor is certainly not a question mark for Pumpkin Jack. While there isn't any voice acting as I mentioned earlier, there is a narrator who provides a brief recap of the story's events every time you complete a chapter of the game. It's pretty refreshing, especially since you get to listen to the narrator talk about how irritating the adventure is for Jack at certain points.
The great Jack, master of trickery, finally has had the tables turned on him. Upon reaching the tablet of the heart of the mountain, Jack bitterly discovers that he is too late.
Speaking of irritating, let's talk about this game's music. It's pretty terrible. Just kidding, it's fine. It's not amazing though, it's about what you'd expect in terms of the music in a spooky Halloween game. The track I remember best is probably the battle theme, since there's only one and you do fight quite a few enemies in this game. I'm sure some of you will enjoy the music more than I did, I just think this type of music isn't really my taste. Once again, this game has epic presentation. But what of that other thing? You know, the gameplay? The thing I supposedly don't talk about enough in my videos? Well, I'm talking about it now. Okay, so Pumpkin Jack is a linear platformer broken up into 6 major areas, and all you have to do is go from point A to point B. There's no unnecessary open world that wastes your time, you're just going from stage to stage in this one. Jack himself controls really well, and he has the undefeated platforming ability of bending his legs then extending them to gain height. What's that called again? I can't remember. Anyway, the only slightly annoying thing about how Jack controls is his double jump. Sometimes he carries his momentum in an awkward way, and it can cause you to overshoot platforms you thought you'd land on easily. Jack also automatically mounts platforms if you jump into the side of them, so you might accidentally jump an extra time and guarantee yourself a one-way trip to hell. Besides that, not much to complain about. There are no lives in Pumpkin Jack, but you do have a pretty sizable health bar that doesn't go down too fast unless you take a ridiculous amount of hits in rapid succession, which can happen sometimes since Jack has no invincibility frame, so large hordes of enemies can pose a legitimate threat sometimes. The game also sports a generous checkpoint system though, so if you do happen to bite the dust for some reason, you're not going to be losing a ton of progress. There are 2 types of collectibles in this game. You've got crow skulls, which you can hand over to a certain NPC to unlock new outfits for Jack to wear if you collect enough of them, and gramophones, which give Jack a fantastic opportunity to show off his world-renowned dancing skills. As inconsequential as these dance numbers are, I still found myself looking forward to seeing the next one whenever I stumbled upon a new gramophone. The world variety is dynamic and interesting too. It does an excellent job of changing up the locations you explore while staying within the sphere of a Halloween adventure. You're going to be seeing the classic pumpkin patches and graveyards, but you do get to take a trip to the North Pole and cause some chaos there as well. This game is also rocking some exciting set pieces too. I won't spoil all of them, but running for your life as a massive barn burns up with you still inside it is pretty exhilarating, as is racing some incompetent workers to get past the security gate before it closes, even if the AI is a bit of a cheating bastard in the latter case. Some of the set pieces are kinda overused though. These flying sections are fun the first 2 or 3 times, but I swear you have to do like 8 of these, and they don't change too much as the game goes on. Jack isn't only operating as a platformer though, that's just his day job. On occasion, you'll have to tackle some puzzles using nothing but Jack's ominous pumpkin head. These puzzles are meant to be the counterparts to the traditional platforming, and I think a good balance is struck between the two. The puzzles aren't so easy to the point of making you feel brain dead, but they're also not so difficult that you're constantly getting frustrated by not being able to figure out the solution. And most of them are pretty fun, especially the one where you get to off Santa Claus. The only puzzle I found annoying was the one where you have to match up tombstones that have the same last names. There are like 30 tombstones, and it's more like a big session of trial and error as opposed to an actual puzzle. But overall, the puzzles are pretty neat. Since you are playing as the PG version of the devil, it's not surprising that you have to kill some motherfuckers, so let's get into the boss fights. Jack faces down all sorts of creepy crawlies in this game, including scarecrows, ghosts, and an old rusty couple that may or may not be cannibals. The first boss fight against the Scarecrow is deceptively easy, but by the time you reach the final showdown with the Wizard, you'll be patting yourself on the back with all the shit you had to dodge during the other boss fights. I wouldn't put any of this game's bosses into the category of feeling cheap or unfair. They're all balanced in such a way that you can avoid the worst of the damage if you have good timing. And if you are screwing up and taking a lot of hits, you could usually destroy some objects in the environment to gather some health pickups and stay in the fight. With each boss you defeat, you unlock a new weapon for Jack to use, which provides a nice breath of fresh air to the combat, since Jack doesn't have too many moves outside of his basic 3-hit combo and his double jump attack, although he can send out his aerial companion for some long-range snipes. My personal favorite is the Enchanted Sword, since it has great range and its aerial attack can nuke clusters of enemies like it's nothing. The gameplay of Pumpkin Jack has a great vision behind it, and it fulfills that without becoming too ambitious and biting off more than it can chew. There are a few minor hiccups, but none of them are serious enough to really hurt the experience. This is a really fun gameplay loop, and I found myself actively engaged with it throughout the entirety of the playthrough rather than just going through the motions until it was over. I'm not the biggest fan of horror games, but Pumpkin Jack doesn't really fit that description anyway, despite being a Halloween adventure. It's got a lot of personality behind its presentation, and it never left me feeling bored. Pumpkin Jack earns an 8 out of 10. It's a 4 to 5 hour long adventure with good replay value, and it's a great option if you want to play something to get yourself in the Halloween spirit without having to suffer through some hellish ordeal that will leave you scarred for life. This Halloween treat certainly isn't on the stale side.